Kunjabi Adi Madhava Kunjabi Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Kunjabi Gopijana Bhalabha Girivardhari Gopijana Bhalabha Girivardhari Jasodhanandana Brajajanaranjana Jasodhanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamanati Ravana Chari Jamanati Ravana Chari Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Girivardhari Jasodhanandana Brajajanaranjana Jasodhanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamunatiravanachari Jamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Kunjabi Hadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Jayom Paramahamsa Srimad His Divine Grace S.B.10.59.21 Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaura Premanandi. Text 21, yes? Text 21 and 22. Shulam Bhaumochutam Hantum Adadhe Vittachodhyamaha. There's 6 lines, huh? Tadvisargat purvam eva narakasya shiro harihi apaharad gaja stasya chakrena kshura nemina. Again. Shulam boma chutam hantum adadhe vittatojamaha tadvisargat purvam eva narakasya shiro harihi apaharad gaja stasya chakrena shura nemina. Ladies? Translation. Boma, frustrated in all his attempts, took up his trident to kill Lord Krishna. But even before he could release it, the Lord cut off his head with his razor-sharp chakra as the demon sat atop his elephant. Purport. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, as Boma raised his invincible trident, Satyabhama, sitting on Garuda with the Lord, said to Krishna, "Kill him right away." And Krishna did just that. And text 22, fallen on the ground, Bhaumasura's head shone brilliantly, decorated as it was with earrings and an attractive helmet, as cries of "Alas, alas!" and "Well done!" arose. The sages and principal demigods worshipped Lord Mukunda by showering him with flower garlands. So the demigods were observing all this. Sages and principal demigods were observing all this. And there were two responses. We'll hear from the commentary. There's a little bit of commentary here from our acharyas. The alas, alas was from his supporters, and the well done was from the demigods. Okay, let's see if I can get that page up. Okay. Text 21, short, purport by Jiva Goswami, or commentary. He, Krishna, cut off his head, Bhauma's head, even before Bhauma could release his spear. He took off the head as if Bhauma was unaware, because he used the chakra with sharp blades on its spokes. So there's a little description of what the chakra looks like or is made up of. It's a wheel chakra with sharp blades on its spokes. Sharp blades on its spokes. And the commentary for text 22, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, the rishis and devas shouted, lamentable, very good. Ha usually indicates sorrow, but here it indicates condemnation, according to Kshira Swami. It doesn't say who that is, but some commentator on the Bhagavatam. Quote, oh, what a sinful person, disturbing the whole world. It is good that you have killed him. They covered Krishna with garlands. Jiva Goswami writes a little differently. The head was attractive to people because it was the head of a demon that had fallen on the ground. Though the Lord created beauty, now it was confirmed. Thus, in joy, the head is described as shining. The earrings were somewhat a cause of the head's shining. Some who were very sinful at that place shouted in condemnation, ha, ha. This is according to Kshira Swami. The sages said, good. The devas, like Indra, covered Krishna with garlands, worshipping him. Well, that's the end of Narakasura. And next comes Mother, the mother of Narakasura, Mother Earth, Bhumi, goddess of earth. I'm going to go to something that's I find interesting. And coming up is the mother presenting the son, presenting the gifts. Oops. The gifts, I mean the stolen property, back, and mentioned there's three things specifically. Three things specifically are Aditi's earrings, the umbrella of Varuna at the mountaintop of Mandara mountain, or Sumeru, sometimes both are described. So I'm going to go to Mahabharata, and Krishna is going to explain the history a little bit of Naraka's stealing Aditi's earrings, etc. And the scene is on the battlefield because the son of Naraka was involved on the side of Duryodhana. And he was a very powerful fighter who had a really humongous white elephant. The white elephant has a name, and the white elephant tried in many ways to trample Bhima. It's pretty exciting. You go back and read. The elephant came to crush Bhima. Bhima dodged. Bhima hid underneath the body of this humongous elephant. With his trunk, the elephant picked up Bhima and threw him to the ground. So Bhima went back under the elephant and started bashing the elephant with his fists, which are iron-like, and he felt pain. So he again grabbed Bhima and threw him to the ground. Bhima decided it's best not to fight with this elephant. He seems invincible. So he went some distance away. And then the elephant started charging with Bhagadatta. Bhagadatta is the name of Narakasura's son, riding on his back. And the elephant started charging the army of the Pandavas and their elephant group, whatever you call it, division of fighters, and he just destroyed all the other elephants. This guy was really big, very powerful. And Bhagadatta was doing his thing as well from the back of the elephant. So I'll go back. Then Bhagadatta started attacking Krishna and Arjuna. So that's what I'm reading from. The king of Prajotishapura then pierced Lord Krishna with iron-tipped arrows decorated with golden feathers. They appeared like meteors blazing through the sky. Those arrows, released from Bhagadatta's bow, pierced the transcendental body of Lord Krishna and entered the earth. Of course, no weapon of this material world can harm the transcendental body of the Lord, for his body is made of Sat Chit Ananda. Playing the part of an ordinary living being, the Lord allowed his body to be pierced, but since the spiritual body of the Lord is not under the influence of material laws, there is no question of pain or death coming to the Lord. Paragraph. Arjuna then severed Bhagadatta's bow and killed the men that were protecting the elephant's legs. King Bhagadatta then released 14 javelins that were as bright as the rays of the sun. However, Arjuna cut each of those into 3 pieces, and then Kunti's son shattered the armor in which the elephant was encased. It's like very chivalrous kind of stuff. The king of Prajotishapura, so that's the capital of Narakasura, same place where Krishna went to finish him. So he was the next king, and he wasn't a nice fellow. The king of Prajotishapura quickly released an iron dart that was decked with gold. Arjuna cut it in 2. He then cut the king's royal umbrella and banner and pierced him with 10 arrows. Bhagadatta became enraged and released 2 lances that knocked Arjuna's crown slightly from his head. Arjuna then placed his crown on his head properly and yelled at Bhagadatta, "Take a last look at this world, O king." Enraged at Arjuna's words, Bhagadatta took up a golden bow and released hundreds of arrows against Lord Krishna and Arjuna. Before those arrows reached the chariot, Partha shattered them and the bow and pierced Bhagadatta with 72 arrows. Overcome with excessive pain, the Prajotisha Pura ruler was furious. Using celestial mantras, he turned his elephant hook into a Vaishnava weapon and hurled it to finish Arjuna's life. However, Lord Krishna rose up in the chariot and the weapon hit his chest, turning into a garland of flowers. Arjuna then chided the lotus-eyed Lord, "Oh, Rishikesha, you are only to guide my horses and not to take part in this battle. Why are you not keeping your vow? If I am in a dangerous situation, you may protect me, but not when I am to compete to defeat the enemy. You know well that I am able to destroy the hosts of gods and demons." Paragraph. "Listen, O Partha," Lord Krishna replied, "to the history behind this weapon," the weapon that's just being referred to. That's that elephant hook or goad or the instrument for controlling the elephant. He transformed it into a certain weapon and threw the weapon, Vaishnava weapon, at Arjuna. Krishna interceded and accepted that weapon himself, turned into a flower garland. So Krishna is going to give a history of Narakasura, his father, stealing, doing his thing. Once upon a time, Mother Earth came to me seeking a benediction for her son, the demon Narakasura. She asked for the benediction of the Vaishnava weapon by which her son could not be slain, even by the gods and demons united. Agreeing to her proposal, I handed over that invincible weapon by which Naraka was able to conquer the 3 worlds, which then describes as conquering. This Narakasura or Bhaumasura took the earrings of Aditi and conquered Indra. He also conquered a portion of the heavenly Mount Meru. So those are 2 stolen items. He then went to Varuna and conquered him, taking his valuable umbrella. When complaints came to me in Dwaraka, I went to Prajotishapur and killed this Bhaumasura. That Vaishnava weapon has been handed down to Bhagadatta, and he has released it to kill you. No one can defeat that weapon except myself. It is for this reason that I have baffled it, breaking my promise. Now that Bhagadatta has been deprived of his weapon, his elephant can now be slain, and you can also kill the king, as I killed his father, for the benefit of the world. So offhand, I couldn't find other places, but this is sufficient to describe how the circumstance of the battle between Narakasura and Indra. Like, it doesn't give details of how he got to the heavenly planets, because he's from the earthly realm. able to make it to Indra's place, defeated Indra. Doesn't say what he did with Indra's kingdom after defeating him, but Aditi's earrings, and Aditi's earrings are described elsewhere as being very effulgent, like the sun is sparkling and mystical, not just decorations. They're mystical. And Varuna's umbrella. Don't know much about Varuna's umbrella. I mean, why does Varuna? He lives in the ocean. Why does he need an umbrella? But somehow he's got a nice umbrella. And the tip of Mount Meru, and elsewhere is described something else. Mandara mountain, as opposed to Meru. But so he had a little museum with some collector's items, I guess. And coming up is his mother is going to come and offer these items and request Krishna to give protection to her son. And Krishna grants protection to her son. In other words, you killed the father, but he's next in line, so please don't harm him, let him live. So Krishna let him live, and then he's going to go in the palace and find the princesses. So lots of excitement. There was some discussion in one of the recent classes. Why so much violence? Ramayana, Mahabharata, violence. That's not good. All this talk of violence doesn't make people violent. Just like watching, they call it action movies. By watching action movies, don't people become interested in action? Or, people that these days, it's not just a movie, it's real life. They go out and on rampage and with weapons and kill people by large numbers. And one of the reasons is they want fame. They want their name in the newspaper or media. They become a well-known person by doing something diabolical. So it seems that such violence shouldn't be in spiritual literature. And that's kind of like Gandhi's position. There wasn't a battle of Kurukshetra. There was no such thing. Krishna is imaginary because he wanted everything nice and smooth. But he died. Through an act of violence. So it is part of the world. It is part of the world. And so what's the proper way to engage in it and the improper way to engage in it? So there's instruction in all fields, and certainly conflict between people, one nation, another nation, one group, another group, one cousin, another cousin, one family member, another family member. It goes on. So how are we to address ourselves to violence? Yeah. So if it's your nature, as it was Arjun's, to give protection to others, then there should be proper training how to give protection, and under what circumstances do you give protection, and when do you not give protection, and so forth. So there's Dharma principles involving all features of life, and this is a big one. It's not new. Politics is not new, and conflict between people and groups of people is not new. So how is it to be exercised? It's something like a question from yesterday evening. The gentleman was asking about karma for lower living entities. Well, there's no karma for lower living entities. The lion kills other animals, and there's no karma for him. But when humans kill, there's karma. And so there's dharma to regulate actions that people may take, and human life is to regulate those actions. So it's a topic because it's part of the history of the world, it's part of life in the human population and the non-human population. So the animalistic tendencies don't just disappear when one comes to the human form of life. So how to regulate those? The propagation of the species, how to regulate those? It happens. It has to happen because otherwise there isn't a continuation of species. It's there. The urge to propagate is there because it's there for the continuation of species. Now, in lower forms of life, there's no regulation. Human form of life, there's regulation. There's a purpose to that regulation. It's not just, there's lower and there's medium and there's higher purposes. It's not just to control people, or it's not just to get to move from unregulated animal life to regulated animal life. Or it's not, the purpose is not elevation to the modes of goodness and thus elevation into the heavenly planets. That's not the purpose either. Although some people think that's the purpose. You do good things, so you go to the good place. And that's the purpose. Some people think that's all there is. Act in a theistic way so you can go to the good place. You don't have to go to the bad place. Piety and sin for elevation and avoiding degradation. But there's much more to it than that. But it doesn't mean it's set to the side. Supposing you're Buddhist, you set it to the side and just be nonviolent. Period. And it's a nice notion. However, that's not the Vedic system. The Vedic system is innocent people are to be protected, and their persons assigned or having the nature, psychophysical nature, to give protection. And so there's dharma to regulate protection. As long as there's to say the same thing a different way, as long as there's a body, there's these four propensities: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Defending is one of them. How do you regulate it? How do you regulate the other three? And how do you regulate defending? It's part of Vedic culture. It's part of human life, is to regulate those things by codes of Dharma. Then there's Paradharma. But we're in a world that's lost a sense of Dharma and lost a sense of purpose of life too at the same time. So it's pretty chaotic. I'm sure we've all noticed it's pretty chaotic. And it's not getting smoother, it's getting wilder and wilder, and it just continues getting like this, down and down and down. It's just like animals. Down and down. Somebody sent to me, I'll make my best effort to repeat. As you may know, there was a period of time when Allen Ginsberg was traveling with Srila Prabhupada. That's the circumstance was when I first met Prabhupada, was Prabhupada and Allen Ginsberg came to my university. Before that was some place in New England, maybe in Boston, then in Buffalo, and then in Ohio University, Ohio State, where Howard Wheeler or Hayagriva was a professor. So Prabhupada was there's a recorded room conversation with Allen Ginsberg and Srila Prabhupada on the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And it's kind of long, but a short of it is, will this interest in the Hare Krishna mantra grow? Yes. For how long will it grow? 10,000 years. What happens after that? People stop chanting. What happens when people start chanting? Prabhupada describes some, very horrible things. People are eating animals, then they'll start eating each other. 10,000 years. There'll be loss of interest in it. So chanting Hare Krishna is protective. It's elevating and protective. And when its absence, when that benediction, 10,000-year benediction is over, it's scary. I'll send it to you. Remind me to send it to you. You can circulate it. Just a transcription. It's found in database discussion between Prabhupada and Allen Ginsberg. So the purpose of regulation is without it, it's a form of animal life. In an animal life, one species eats another species. And sometimes one species eats its own species. And human life will become degraded. It is becoming, but the protection is this Hare Krishna Mahamantra and, of course, propagation of Vedic knowledge, and how important it is to do both in this world, because that's the antidote for the age of Kali. Exactly the question at the very beginning part of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now that Krishna is departed, where's religious principles to be protected from Srimad Bhagavatam? So propagating Srimad Bhagavatam is an important part of protection for people that are innocent. That's a Kshatriya function, but the Brahmanas can do it also by propagating Srimad Bhagavatam, because it gives protection to religious principles. And there's a purpose behind those religious principles. Mamekam Sharanam. That's the essence behind all Dharma. Come to Krishna. Come to understand Krishna by taking full shelter of Krishna. So Narakasura didn't, and his son Bhagadatta didn't, and they met with their demise. So just this Mahabharata seems nice, because Mother Earth had requested a Vaishnava weapon from Krishna, by which Naraka could not be killed. Krishna gave it. Naraka apparently gave it to Bhagadatta, his son, who used it against Arjuna. But the only way to stop it was Krishna himself. So he stopped it. And when that weapon was gone, then he was no longer invincible. Interesting. Now we heard in this chapter 59, there was a spear that was invincible. That's the language used in the verse, invincible spear. But before he could use the invincible spear, Krishna chopped his head. So he couldn't release the spear, but it was an invincible spear that was so invincible that it defeated the thunderbolt of Indra. I mean, the last couple of days there's been rumbling of thunder, and I didn't see any lightning, but lightning is very powerful. And Indra releases the thunderbolt. But something can defeat the thunderbolt, was this weapon of Narakasura. And even more powerful than that which can defeat a thunderbolt is that which can defeat a devotee of the Lord. So Krishna intercepted it. He alone could neutralize, and thus the weapon was no longer effective. there's a lot at stake. You start messing with demigods and demons, and there's a lot at stake. So when we're propagating Srimad Bhagavatam and the holy name, we should expect there's going to be resistance. Don't expect there's not going to be resistance. Expect there's going to be resistance because it's something very powerful. And something that's very powerful, persons who are opposed to Krishna, those persons who are opposed to God, the atheist class of people, and their whole culture is going to be threatened. So there'll be attempts to stop it and to harm individuals who are propagating it. It happens. So we shouldn't be surprised. Let's see if there's some discussion. Interesting chapter, huh? Yes.
Thank you, Shri Swami. You mentioned the importance of for a kshatriya, in this case of Krishna is giving the example of addressing wrong by, wrong cannot be allowed to go on, so it should be punishable. And one of the things it's very relevant in the sense, when you're trying to take a position of leadership to make sure that people are protected by addressing, wrongdoing timely and properly, but also brings into place the necessity to have this type of dharmic, guidelines like that. In Krishna's position, he established always these principles of religion, and in terms, dharma becomes a duty. So it requires that the presence of that guidelines in order to be able to establish law. So, in one sense, if that's not there, if there is no proper guidelines, then how can you guarantee that you're not going to do things according to your whimsical, conclusions or things like that, that is not influenced by your personal biases or things like that. So it's established in a principle of law, and making that law. Now, my question is this.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the question.
Yeah. When we trying to protect also a relationship, when you're trying to highlight the aspect of this type of connection with Krishna and with Krishna's representative, is about loving relationship. When you bring about all these rules and regulations, all these laws and restrictions, all these punishment and rewards, it becomes, is to balance that is not easy.
What?
To balance it.
What?
Balance. To balance the two.
Balance.
Yes.
Okay.
It's not an easy thing. So what would you say about that in terms of creating this balance between caring and between discipline?
The answer to this question has everything to do with consciousness, or one could say proper training. Something is to be utilized properly, and to use something properly, It requires intelligence, and intelligence comes to those who have purity, the Dhammi Buddhi Yogam Tam, that kind of intelligence, how to come to Krishna and how to help others come to Krishna. So when the purpose is sharp and focused, then whatever is done is fine. And back to this long preamble that you gave, that's rare in this world. There are people that feel this is right and they're moving, and then there's some other people that feel no, that's not right, rather it's this, and they clash. So your question is now balanced and how to ensure it. It requires proper training in purity. Supposing your training is still in progress and the purity isn't yet at the 100% mark. So then what's going to happen? Something less than perfect is going to happen because consciousness is less than perfect. Then the good news is Krishna will adjust things when the purpose is correct. Krishna will adjust things when the purpose is correct. Now, let's say there's 100 people in the room and they're thinking, in different degrees, that's me. I'm less than perfect, but my interest is right, and so I'm moving forward, and then there's disagreement amongst those 100 people because the balance question, how do you proceed between the encouragement and punishment, or the protection? So it's not easy, as you established. How do you ensure it? It's the only way to ensure it is becoming pure. So we're always, those in the Kshatriya position or administrative position or leader position, strive for purity. And that's possible for the Brahmanas. Therefore, there needs to be guidance from qualified Brahmanas. Therefore, there need to be qualified Brahmanas. And a submissiveness from the administrators to qualified Brahmanas. And if that's missing, it's kind of messy. It's not kind of messy, it's messy. And that's what we have. The reality of the situation is that's what we have. Something that's a little messy. Because where's the qualified Brahmanas and where's the qualified Kshatriyas with training and purity? And Brahmanas to go to take guidance from. Yet at the same time, having said all of that, Prabhupada wanted us to propagate Krishna consciousness in various temple-centric and non-temple-centric methods to propagate Krishna consciousness. And through that propagation, something happens. Purification of the propagators takes place. And the ability to increase in the ability to cooperate together when there's 100 people in the room and they have a different view. Then there's an organizational structure where there's leaders. And those leaders have a very important service. Prabhupada's words, if they mess, they're very, because the position is high, they're very culpable. So there's transcendental law that's involved in this balance question that you're asking. But Krishna will adjust, provided the intention of the person is, let us see that Krishna's interest, or the representatives, the acharyas in specific section interest is being met. Then you can have diversity and it's not a problem. Diversity in itself is natural. It's not a problem. But when respect is there and diversity is there, then you have something nice. And when respect starts to disappear or diminish, then you have something messy. And therefore, proper training. So the Rupa Goswami gives us that training, how to respect Vaishnavas. Nectar of Instruction, text number 5, how to instruct in practical terms. That's where the balance comes. Following our great acharyas. Even though we're not there yet with following those great acharyas, and that's how you get the balance. Gradually. I'll just add, aside from the administrative question you're asking, there's just everyday people. I just received some communication from an everyday person, and they like Prabhupada, they like the teachings, and generally speaking, they like their visits to the temple, although there's some situations that they find uncomfortable. But they find, this newer person is finding that there's nicety in exchanges, but it doesn't seem to be with feeling because there's no ongoing relationship. So like, to come to the stage that Prabhupada exhibited, where he had thousands of followers and he held their faith, that's spiritual power. So it's when people are not mature yet, they're not able to live up to what. So there's our teachings, and then there's where we are. The same principle applies to the balance question you're asking about leadership. We have persons in leadership that aren't fully qualified. So maybe they shouldn't be leaders, but we have to have leaders. And some persons, it's their nature to be leaders. So then it's incumbent upon those that have that nature to be leaders to attract the qualities necessary to be leaders, starting with the sincere interest to be aligned with the mission of disciplic succession. So it's not. There's a long answer to a delicate question. Anyone else? Yes.
This is just a comment.
Comment.
Yeah, because you mentioned that when we are um, giving the message of Bhagavatam to others, it's natural that there is resistance. Uh, and I also feel like there is progress when we give the message of Srimad Bhagavatam to others. Like we feel purified, and eventually they get purified, because I'm just reflecting on where I was when I just started and like where I am, and I just feel like I appreciate and understand a little bit more about Krishna.
Well,
So,
the response to this comment is the consciousness behind that act of extending is very important. The consciousness of extending Srimad Bhagavatam and its message, if it's, I'm not a perfect person, but the message itself is perfect, and I have faith in this perfect message, and so I'm sharing it with you. But explicitly, I'm less than perfect. But being an instrument of the perfect. So please don't think of me as the representation of the perfect, because I'm not. I mean, you have to say it explicitly, but that's the consciousness behind. And give your attention to the message and not to my shortcomings. Because by giving attention, I have faith by giving attention to that message and sharing it with others, then gradually more qualification, more purity, more capacity to be a transparent instrument will occur. So then it could be something else. So it's the consciousness of being nimitta matra, the instrument of the Supreme Person, that's our function, and striving to come to that consciousness. And that's our Hare Krishna movement, and the spreading of the Lord Chaitanya Sankirtan movement. That's the heart. Anything else? Yes.
Um, I don't know if I understood correctly, Sharampa Swami, but the weapon requested by Bhumi for her son was to be a weapon that could be used against Vaishnavas? So it's a question.
Sound system. I'm lost.
Oh,
Did you get it? Could you repeat it? Yeah. Yeah. Not. I don't know if it was capable of being used against Vaishnavas specifically. It's called a Vaishnava weapon, but that doesn't. That to me, that doesn't mean this. The purpose of this weapon is to harm Vaishnavas or kill Vaishnavas. Anything of this world, but it comes from a source. Same source. Everything comes from. So how is it possible that there can be weapons that have the source of Lord Vishnu can be used against Vaishnavas? Because people are demoniac. They can use anything this way or that way. That's how it can happen. Because we've been speaking about Prahlad. How is it that Prahlad could be, his life was put at risk by his father so many ways? In Prahlad's case, he was protected, but somebody else may be harmed. Possible. Someone else may be harmed by some weapon that's used against a Vaishnava. So how is that possible? Well, everything comes from Vishnu. So things can be used properly or improperly. It takes something good. Here's one. I'm listening to an interview with one of my godbrothers. I won't name his name. But he was speaking very strongly about you're not the body. While it's good, it can be misused. It can be misused in terms of neglecting one's responsibilities to society, family, and you name it, because you're not the body. So a good thing can be misused and a bad thing can be misused. So in everything that exists, including you're not this body, that comes from Krishna, it can be misused. So how is it possible? Because people have free will. And they can misuse a good thing. So weapons in and of themselves are not good things, bad things. Depends on how they're used. It's all resting on consciousness. That's our understanding anyway. From Krishna, it's all good, absolute, but people can misuse. It's like Madhusudana. We read this the other day. Hayagriva killed Madhu and Kaitava because they were trying to steal the Vedas. Now the Vedas aren't bad, but the Vedas in the hands of a corrupt person can be very detrimental. How's that possible? Because they're corrupt persons. They can use something good in a bad way. Okay. You have one more?
There's a leader on the same line, Guru Maharaj. I was thinking how liberal Krishna is, because I think Mother Bhumi asked after he killed Bhamasura,
Mode of goodness?
Mother Bhumi,
Mother Bhumi.
when Krishna killed Narakasura, she asked her to place his son in the throne like that. I think that was the case.
Yes.
Now, like son, like father, like son, you can be preemptive and understand, oh, this person is also demoniac, so you more or less.
But Krishna agreed.
But Krishna shows this liberality. He's quite liberal.
Yeah, very.
And so it's almost that you give opportunities.
Yes.
You give opportunities, but when you transgress, then it comes the chakra.
Yeah. Shastra first, Shastra next. Srila Prabhupada ki